Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi Live Noding. In this episode, I'm gonna be sharing with you this Sverchok node setup. Basically, this is something from the vault that I have this for a while, and I want to share it with you. Basically, the setup allows you to create some kind of texture that if you render, it's just gonna be like a sequence of animations, and this sequence of animations can be useful if you use it as transition. Let's say you have some kind of scene or like character skin, um, two character skin, and you want to kind of blend between the two. You need to transition, and the easiest way to do that is by using the UV. So we need some kind of UV texture, and we want to animate it. And I'm using Sverchok here, but you can also use animation nodes. As you can see, the setup is very simple. It's not as complicated, but yeah, I'll explain it to you. Basically, this is I have a circle over here, and the circle, there's nothing much to it. It's just basically a circle that I can change the radius. I can change the number of vertices, and this guy is arranged in a way that when you look at it through the camera, it's simply covering the cameras, right? And this is something that I could animate by simply like lerping between the two transform. So I get a bunch of them here, but if let's say I start with, I have 1,000 of them at the moment. If I just make like 10 or maybe 100, you can see what's really happening here. Whenever I animate this value, so this guy is simply just gonna appear and then it's gonna stop right there. The idea is to cover the camera, and this thing, this is something that you can render as a sequence. This becomes some kind of mask. So yeah, that's the idea. Maybe in the next video I'll explain this a little bit more. But here we have a circle. Okay, the circle is kind of instance, and if I bake this out, basically it's gonna be just a single object containing all this circle. So the one that's really responsible for the whole transitions is basically this transform from the bottom. And here I have the vector lerp, basically transitioning between two transform value, in this case just two locations. And I'm also controlling the scale using the noise. That's why I get this lerping between two position, and also the scale transformations of the circle. So this is gonna be something that's help us transition between two material or two kind of skin, anything basically, because this is gonna be some kind of flat mask. Okay, so slightly complicated there, but it's gonna be making sense in a bit. So that's so imagine this is a skin, like skin A, and then you want to transition to the next skin. You cover it using this circle, and then the skin changes, and then the circle will disappear, and then you have skin number 2, kind of like a masking actually. Yeah, maybe I should just call it transition or masking, generating some kind of procedural masking using Sverchok or maybe animation nodes in the future. And of course, this doesn't have to be circle. This can be anything, can be 3D objects, 3D geometry, maybe like Susan head or any kind, donuts, whatever. But it's basically it's creating some kind of 2D or 3D masking that you can use on any character with a UV. So that's the basic idea. So I think I pretty much explaining everything. This one is actually the secret here. This range float and rewire, if you look at it, by default everything is flat and it's kind of overlapping. But if you are using fractal rewire and you kind of increase the depth like that, and with this camera, especially if the camera is let me zero out the rotation and arrange it a little bit better. So now you can see, especially because this camera is orthographic, this is really something that we can use to create transition masking. It's gonna be pretty cool when you actually see it in action. So I can generate like 1,000 circles, doesn't matter, but this guy can be animated like that. So it's covering the first skin and then transitioning to the second skin, just like that. It's kind of like a vibe. I don't know, I think it's related to compositing, but the whole thing, if you think about it, procedural animation and procedural texture is kind of can be bridged using this method. So yeah, this is the idea. Currently it's just a circle, but this setup allowing you to create this. And oh yeah, one more thing I forgot is this randomness. It can be random, but can also be a grid. And especially more interesting is not if it's not a grid, it's gonna be more interesting. So you can so this guy can be like a grid. Maybe I should move it down or something like that. And if I animate this guy, it's gonna appear and then covering it like a grid, almost like a scale, right? Fish scale or something. Here we go. That's probably a little bit clearer. Make the circle smaller. And from here, if we animate this guy, see, it's gonna appear like that. And this orthographic camera, we can scale it. Okay, now if we animate, you can see the transition into grid. And currently in this demo, I'm just gonna animate the same. It's kind of like it's animating from A to B and then back from B to A. But in the more complex situations, it can be anything basically. It can be a little bit more complicated. So because if you're doing it using just a procedural texture or like doing it in the shader, it's gonna be a little bit harder. But doing it this way with actual geometry, it's a lot easier logically, and you can randomize this scale basically. So yeah, this is the basic idea. Maybe in the next video I'll explain this further. So if we render this out, if we render out these animations, we can use it as some kind of mask, animated mask that we can use to do transition. Okay, so hopefully this is useful. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.